Hello and welcome to the latest instalment of MFS's Let's Talk Property podcast, where we connect industry experts to explore an array of topics within the dynamic world of property. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a minute to share a quick disclaimer. MFS are a bridging loan and buy-to-let mortgage provider and are not financial advisors. The opinions and views expressed in this episode are personal to the host and guest and may not reflect the views of MFS. For more information on MFS, you can find us at www.mfsuk.com and be sure to keep up to date with our podcast updates on Instagram at MFS_LTP. Now let's get started. Welcome back to the Let's Talk Property podcast. Today I'm joined by Jack Bowyer from Jack Bowyer Properties. Jumping straight in, Jack, tell me more about what you do and how it works.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me here today.
You're welcome.
Essentially, what I offer is slightly different. People think of estate agencies, whereas I'm your personal estate agent. So rather than working with an entire company and potentially getting passed from person to person throughout the process, I meet with you, we have a chat, hopefully we get along. I'm the one that's looking after all of the viewings, doing all the negotiations, and then getting you through that process to make sure you get the sale.
Brilliant. And how does your focus on clients and service differ from your everyday sort of traditional estate agent?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest difference. I work with a handful of people at a time. The idea is to give really strong service to few people, rather than the kind of stack them high and kind of see what sticks kind of mentality.
So not a volume-based?
Not a volume-based business. I have, as I say, just a handful of people that I'm working with at any one time. The idea is that I know everything about your situation, everything about your property, super clued in for the negotiations, getting you the absolute best result. And then I'm with you then right the way through the legals to make sure it crosses the line.
And what is your relationship sort of with your brokerage, and how does that help you provide sort of your service?
Definitely, it's a big part of it actually. So my brokerage is called EXP. Okay. It's a company of almost 100,000 people across the world.
Right.
And rather new in the UK, so the whole kind of independent estate agent's quite new here, but it's really taking off because you basically get one very experienced professional by your side throughout the entire time.
Yep.
And it's quite appealing for people. And part of being part of that brokerage is it means I get all of the sort of the back end computer systems looked after, so I can just focus on being the best estate agent I can be. But I'm also part of a network, and we share properties and we share buyers and renters.
I was just going to ask that. Does that give you access to then to sort of foreign investors, foreign expats, that kind of thing?
It gives really, really wide access.
Yeah.
So most of the people that join EXP have either been a manager or a director of a bigger agency in a previous life. They miss being an actual estate agent. So they bring with them tons and tons of experience.
Yeah.
And where I get the vast majority of a fee, what I can actually do, which is different to a high street, is I can go out to other companies, I can go out to other people with EXP and say, guys, we even do like, it's kind of cringy, but like brokers opens. Like sometimes we have like a new house, and it's like, right guys, we're going to be listing this £1 million, launching in 2 weeks, come around next Thursday, and if you've got someone for it, I'll happily share the fee that I'm going to make so that we can get the seller the best result as quickly as possible.
So you're getting the right client into the right property.
The right client as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And it's purely focused on getting the seller or the landlord the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in, holding it to myself for 2 months if it takes that long. If you're another agent out there listening and you ever see one of my properties and you've got someone for it, give me a call and I'll happily split my fee with you if we can get my client the best result possible.
So the next question, Jack, is two-pronged. What would you say is the biggest challenge in the industry for estate agents right now, and also sellers?
Yeah. It's good you separated them, because I think for sellers, well, for both, selling the property is a challenge right now, generally speaking.
Yeah.
There's so much on the market. We're at a point right now, I saw a stat literally this morning that said there's more property on the market now than there has been since 2019. Okay. And that's not equaled by the corresponding amount of buyers, because that wouldn't be a problem, right?
Yeah.
So what we've got right now is buyers have a huge amount of choice, and it takes some very frank conversations with sellers. If you want to sell, we need to be realistic about what it's going to take for today's market, and that's going to be making sure the property looks fantastic, the best it could possibly look, whether it's staging, whether it's doing the bits around the house you've been avoiding, whether it's decorating, whatever it might be. And it takes some guts from the estate agent to tell people these things, because their home is like, it's their thing.
It's there.
To walk in and say, great, but we need to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And then also it's a conversation around price. And you don't always necessarily want to go with a marketing price, you want a marketing strategy. So sometimes it involves putting it on at what might be considered, cheaper, in order to generate a whole bunch of interest, get multiple offers, and then find the best price that the market's willing to pay. And another problem in the industry right now is properties sitting on the market for an awfully long time. So the longer something's on the market, the stats show, the less overall it achieves. So you want to go in, attractive, get it sold, and then you're more likely to keep hold of your buyer as well.
And you think that's sort of maybe the best way for sellers and estate agents to overcome those challenges, is to maybe think of different ways in which they can sort of move away from the sort of traditional way of selling properties?
Well, look, it's difficult because people often have these rose-tinted glasses when it comes to their own home.
Yeah.
And they might know what their neighbour sold for or what their mate around the corner sold for, but that was a year ago, 2 years ago. What you need to look at today is not what has sold, but what else could someone buy right now. So you're in the market, you've got £1 million to spend, you've got within a quarter mile or half a mile of your house, you need to look at what's on the market. And remember, this was a bit of a brainwave for me. When someone told me, like, what's on Rightmove is failing to sell, right? Whatever's on Rightmove has not sold.
Yep.
Unless you're ticking that button that says include, sold, STC, subject to contract. They're the ones that have been priced attractively enough to entice a buyer. Everything else on the market, if it's been on the market for a month or more, you could probably suggest that it's overpriced.
Yeah. And how do you see the industry faring over the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah.
Do you have any hope for the industry over this time in terms of how that's going to start generating more sales? Or
I think there's two bits there. There's the industry and then there's the market, right? So the market, most estate agents, I think we're generally an optimistic bunch anyway, but most of the commentators seem to think that hopefully rates are going to continue to come down over the next 12 to 18 months.
We all hope.
Which, my mortgage hopes. And which should hopefully bring in more buyers and should make things slightly more affordable for people. And then as for the industry, I'm a big advocate for this personal approach, right? And I'm seeing more and more of the best estate agents that I know that work for big companies leaving big companies and going out to either work for themselves or work for a brokerage like I do.
And what qualities do you think a property listing needs to be able to sort of have to be able to sell in obviously today's market or current climate?
Yeah, your marketing needs to be the best it could possibly be.
So the main one you would...
Yeah, we're talking, everyone's got professional photos and floor plans. I do videos. The videos are very much about explaining the lifestyle in the area as much as the house. Then you need a pricing strategy, not just an asking price. And then you need to make sure that you really trust your agent, because, this is huge, right? This is probably the most expensive thing you own. One of the most stressful times of your life. You want someone who is good, you can get hold of when you need to, and is, you really feel has got your absolute best interest and is going to get you the best possible price from the best possible buyer and is going to get it across the line.
And being realistic with that price as well in terms of
100%,
as we touched on before.
And if you've got that right agent, they will, they'll provide you with the evidence and they'll provide you with the confidence to know that this is the market today.
Yeah.
If you've got an agent that's willing to put your property on at too much money, you might even think you're being ambitious. They're probably not the right agent. You need an agent who's willing to have those difficult conversations with you.
Yeah. And moving away, I suppose, from the industry and more towards yourself. Yeah. I suppose, what type of properties and clients do you usually work with?
Yeah.
Or are you seeing more of one type of property than another, or whether that be residential or commercial, or?
Yeah, I focus purely on residential.
Purely residential.
I do sales and I do lettings.
Okay.
I live in Wandsworth, I focus southwest London, also central London, but across London more generally, I can help and I can introduce you to lots of other agents similar to myself that I trust and are very good and work for themselves and have a very similar ethos. In terms of the actual properties, it's a wide array. It's more about the client. Okay. So I'm looking for a client that values service and values paying for a person who's going to commit all of their time, effort and energy to getting you the best result.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for someone who wants to pay the cheapest rate and wants the highest asking price and is completely unrealistic.
Yeah.
We're not a fit for each other. So when I meet with people, I don't think of it as a valuation as such. I say, look, allow a good hour to 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to answer every question you've got on the market, on properties, on estate agents, how to pick them, everything you need to know. And at the end of it, we're going to work out if we're a fit. Sellers and landlords are my client 99% of the time.
Okay.
I am rolling out a buying service very soon, which is really cool actually, because it's kind of crazy that in the UK, and we were chatting before this, right? In other countries, you have an estate agent working for you when you're buying, and it's their job to make sure they get you the best possible deal.
Yeah.
In the UK, there's no one representing the buyer. But if you could have an estate agent like me who's got access to far more information, far more stats, knows the market, knows how to deal with estate agents, chances are they can get you a much better price. And I dealt with my first client earlier this year, and it was a lot of fun.
And what's the most important thing to you when deciding to work with a new client? Yeah. Is there one thing, or is there multiple things that you sort of...
I'm not sure there is one thing.
No?
No, I've learned through my career that one difficult client makes your life hell compared to, you can have 10 people and you've just got one difficult client. So I'm not afraid to not work with people.
Yeah.
I think right now I just want people to make sure we're on the same wavelength. And there's a lot of time goes into before the property even goes to market to make sure that we're a right fit. And so, touch wood, so far, I think I attract people to me that are looking for the kind of thing that I offer. And I always point people towards my reviews on my social media because I post a lot about what I do, and people get a look behind the scenes, so they know what to expect.
So it's not just on faces.
There shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah. And what does a typical sort of day look like for yourself?
So I did
apart from filming in here.
Yeah, I sold a property for a few friends recently. 3 of them bought together, and it took forever to go through the legals. It's a nightmare, and it's not fun, but it has to be done. And I said to them, like, I'm chasing up this, and they were kind of joking, like, you do a lot of chasing, and you do. Like, it's not like these programs where you just swan around in suits and Lamborghinis.
It gets listed, and then the next time it's sold, you don't see the bits in between.
No, there's a lot of chasing, like solicitors, there's councils, there's housing associations, there's managing agents, there's so many different things. And the agent is basically there to really just try and keep the deal together throughout the sale and to communicate up and down the chain of properties if there's multiple being sold and bought. And I think that's a lot of what you're paying for, is someone who's not just looking to get an offer agreed, tick a box and pass it on to someone else. I'm still there. I'm still the one doing all of this, and I'm still the one that's going to make sure the sale goes through.
Yeah, brilliant. And how do you source those clients?
It's tricky.
Is that?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah.
So,
but do you outreach? Do they come to you? Is it a mixture? Is it social media, as we've
it's a mixture
earlier?
Yeah. So when I used to work at a big corporate, the phone rang. Hi, can you come to my house?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen so much right now. It's starting to happen more. It's a lot of word of mouth because thankfully so far, I put a lot of effort into these sales, into these lets, and often people know other people that are looking to sell or looking to rent their properties. So that's been a great help. Friends and contacts I've made over the years, I've put a lot of effort into my career, and I think people value that. And then also there's reaching out to people that are on the market right now who've maybe not got the best marketing or not the best price, or maybe their agent's not doing everything they could, and for whatever reason they're still on the market.
And how do you do that? So if it's listed on Rightmove or...
I mean, property's a weird one, right? There's literally a sign outside the house that says, I'm for sale. So
we'll find you just walking up and down?
Some people, I mean, literally, you can knock on people's doors and you can say, look, I'm a local agent. I work slightly different to how most companies work. I'll be very transparent about what you need to sell. If you're interested in a second opinion, let's have a chat. There are all sorts of clever bits of software that have all sorts of dates and addresses, and you can send out letters to people on the market. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good source of leads, as I would call them as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, honesty is probably the biggest thing, as we touched on earlier. I mean, how important is honesty in relationship building when, I suppose, working and operating independently?
Massively.
Yeah.
I mean, my name's above the door, right?
Yeah.
It's huge. It's everything, ultimately. I'm building my brand on being the guy that gives you practical, honest, advice and feedback the whole time. It might not be what you want to hear, but if you want to sell, then it's what you need to hear. And I think a lot of people are there to just, flatter and just go there with all this bravado, but it's not that kind of market. It's very difficult to sell a property right now.
And I suppose being realistic as well, as we touched on before, with price point and everything else.
I'm not there to list it. I'm there to sell the property. You might not believe it, but some people's job is literally go out and take properties on. She doesn't have to worry about selling them. All their job is to just get them on the market. And then it's someone else's job to worry about actually selling it afterwards.
Because it's interesting you said that, because you never really think about that sort of side of it, but it's such a good way of doing it. I'm there to sell the property, not list it.
Yeah.
So there is hundreds, if not thousands, and hundreds of thousands of properties listed on Rightmove.
Yeah.
But, and like you said earlier, until that's got STC, so subject to contract, it's just listed.
Well, some interesting things, right? Depending on various different sources, you're looking at somewhere between half and 2/3 of properties sell with not the first agent they list with, so the second or third agent.
Right, okay.
That's been pretty consistent over the years. At the minute, about half the properties just aren't selling at all. And that's just purely because it's an age-old argument, right? Is it sellers that are being unrealistic, or is it agents that aren't willing to have the tough conversations?
Yeah.
And I think it's about finding that combination. An agent that is willing to tell you, and there's so much evidence out there. I'm not going to say it's easy, but you were saying, right, you got a compliment, you weren't sure if it was a compliment about doing the basics very well.
Yeah.
That's exactly what estate agency is. It's just doing little things consistently and doing them well.
And you touched on it before, but obviously there's a lot of property that is on the market at the moment.
Yeah.
But does a lot of that fall down to there's not enough people buying? There's not enough people, so
it's a perspective thing,
because
right?
Again, it's difficult if you've got, I don't know, even if you just take it down to the basics of maybe 200 properties, but you've only got 100, but it's difficult then to fit that. The maths doesn't add up with it, does it? So how do we get more? What do you think would need to change to obviously get that sort of closer together? Or
I think there's definitely a hesitation for people to sell. A lot of first-time buyers are in this picture, right?
Yeah.
And it's what I call losing the battle to win the war. You might not be making as much money as you thought you were going to make on your first property. You might even be losing a little bit of money. But if you're growing your family, or you've got a little one running around a flat and you want to get them a garden, ultimately you win if you move.
Yeah.
And in buyers markets, it's good to upsize, right? Because if you're selling at 10% off a peak, you're buying at 10% off a peak. So you're gaining money if the market then corrects.
In the long run, yeah.
Whereas if you go the other way, you're better off cashing out in a very good seller's market.
Finally, Jack, before we wrap up, we'd like to do a quick fire roundup at the end of the episode. As someone who is constantly involved in buying and selling property, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to someone who wants to sell a property in the current market?
Yeah, so there's the really hot marketing. There's making sure you've got an agent you trust, and then there's being strategic about pricing. But just a quick little tip out there for anyone who might be on the market struggling to sell right now. There's 4 things that I look at, right? It's, again, making sure your marketing is really good. So compare it to other properties on the market. You need to look at how your property presents. So get someone who's from an outside perspective to come in, make sure there's no funny smells, make sure it looks as it does on the pictures, make sure it just feels as good as possible when you get there. Do you really feel that your agent's giving it their all? Are they in communication with you even when things aren't going right? Yeah. Maybe you need to look at a different one there. Or if the first 2 aren't great and they haven't told you about it. And then fourthly, of course, is the price. Maybe that's a bit punchy for today's market.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time, Jack. Just for anyone out there listening, where can people find you on socials? And
Instagram mostly, also Facebook at Move with Jack. LinkedIn, I am Jack Bowyer. And if you want to Google me, you'll find Jack Bowyer Property. You'll find all my reviews on my website as well.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, Jack.
Thank you. Great to meet.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate and share this episode. You can access our previous episodes in all the usual places, as well as on our website at www.mfsuk.com/podcast. You can also stay connected with us on Instagram at MFS_LTP. See you next time.